Hi, I'm Lisa Ambjörn. I'm the head writer of Young Royals, and you're watching the Permanent Rain Press.
Hi everyone, it's Chloe with the Permanent Rain Press, and today I'm so thrilled to be joined by Lisa Ambjörn. How are you?
Hi, thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing so well, and I'm excited about this chat and to be stealing just a bit of your time as a busy writer. So I appreciate you being here and glad we could get this done.
Oh, thank you. It's so nice to get outside the writing bubble a little bit.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get to see a bit more of your insights into, as you mentioned, Netflix's Young Royals. But before that, I wanted to start off with your background in and passion for the arts. Did you grow up in a creative environment?
Well, I guess I did in the sense that my dad was always playing music when I was little. He had like a little studio in a wardrobe in the connected house that I grew up in. But I mean, he was a teacher. He's retired now, and my mom was a journalist. So I guess in a sense, yeah, I like, so writing existed, but in the journalistic sense, in the kind of exploring themes and interesting people and things that had happened in the world. And my dad doing music, and they've always been super super supportive of me doing film, and I was in like theater since I was 9. I always thought I was going to be an actress. So in that sense, I had a lot of like culture around me growing up, but never thought I was going to write and work with like the written word.
So you mentioned actress, which is interesting. Like I know you started writing in your mid-20s, and prior to that, you were in film editing and casting. So when did your mindset kind of shift and you knew you had a voice as a writer?
Yeah, I think because I was acting. I've been acting since I was like a little kid, and I was doing that through all of these different like small theater companies like out in the suburbs. And when I was about like 16 or 17, I think I kind of realized that the roles written for women weren't that fun to play. And in the theater groups that I was active in, we were like encouraged to take part in the like writing the sketches, and we did a lot of comedy, etc. And I think there's some kind of idea of that you could be a part of shaping the actual story kind of started to appear in me. But it took I took a detour thinking like, oh, I'm going to be an editor instead, or I'm going to work behind the camera. I'm going to work with lighting, or I'm going to do something. I'm really good at casting, so I'm going to do that because I'm good at getting people to open up. So it took almost like 10 years from that until I was 25 to kind of have that shift in me where I was like, actually, this is something I want to pursue. But I don't think I had dared pursuing that earlier, because when you're actually dreaming of something and like, this is what I want to do, you also put yourself up to failure. You can also fail. Then if you know what you want to do, then you can fail at it. But if you don't really know, if you're just kind of doing what everyone else is telling you to do, and like, I don't know even why I started editing. I like the edit process, but I'm not very technical. And people were just like, oh, you could do, and like, I just kept on doing it for ages. And then suddenly I was like, why am I doing this part when I'm actually want to decide what we're going to tell,
As you mentioned, it's scary. Like you dabble here and there, but it takes a lot to kind of say, I want to do this full time. And having that power to build that narrative is always something that's so freeing. Now, who are some people who have mentored or helped guide you as a writer?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that I'm going to forget to mention now, because that's what happens throughout the journey.
Your Academy Awards speech, right? Your
Yeah, exactly.
your Emmy speech.
No, but I think for me, like you said before, as well as finding my voice, I think it took a long time. Like, it depends on what you like think of as a long time. But when I started writing, I was 25. I did like 1 year in a public school in Sweden, where it was very like openly creative writing. You were writing for stage and for radio and for all of those kind of things. And we had a really good teacher there called Anna Platt, who is a screenwriter in Sweden, who was just very like supportive, and everyone did like really weird stuff. Like I everything I wrote there, I don't think I've ever used anything, but it was just such a freeing process to just start with that like immense creative, just like force, and finding all of these little, like trying things out, just trying everything and trying to write for stage or for radio or for film. And that was a person who just like kind of opened that up a bit. But then as a screenwriter, when I had understood that, look, no, I'm going to do film and TV, that was probably when I had done then my bachelor degree. The last year or the second year, I did an internship at the public network in Sweden called SVT. And they had just got a new head of drama, which her name is Anna Kroneman. And she was the first one who I kind of sent like the idea for what would then become Sjukt or Sick, the first like thing I started writing. That was my own story. And she just like sent it back to me with a post-it on it saying like, this is fucking good. And like, for me, I think I really needed encouragement in that, like that time. And they were all at that drama department. They were all like super supportive. And it was like so good as a screenwriter to come in and see that side of the process as well, and to read and comment on so many other people's great work, because then you started to see like actually understanding the structure of what works and not. And then there's loads of people, you know, who's been like I have writing friends. Actually, Pia, who is one of the episode writers on Young Royal, she was my mentor my last course in school. And, you know, she's older than me. She's much more experienced. She's done some like very appreciated series in Sweden. And she was a great support to me then, also writing Sick or Sjukt. And like, she's also an inspiration, because now then when I came and asked her if she wanted to be an episode writer of Young Royals, I was like, I didn't dare asking. I got the producer to do it, because I was like, maybe she will, you know, feel like, why is this like young woman thinking that like I'm going to work for her? But she was so like, yeah, no, that's amazing. Like, you know, and that was also really inspiring, like, oh, how you can take away the prestige and the kind of ego and just be like, no, I just want to do like really great stories. So she's an inspiration in that sense as well. And how I want to be also when I'm older.
That's so nice how, like you mentioned, it's funny that you knew her, but you were scared to ask her personally, just for the fear that she might say no. But it's so nice to be working with people who you have kind of known for a period of time and admired their work. You mentioned your personal experience, so that would be you surviving cervical cancer. What did this personal journey really teach you about yourself and about life in general?
You have so good questions, but I think I could expand on this for like days on end. I think getting cervical cancer, I was 24 when I got it. It was such a shock because you don't think, in a sense, I was very naive before. Like, you don't think that that's going to come out of the blue when you're 24, and especially not cervical cancer, because it has that kind of because it's where the cancer actually is. Like, it's really hard to talk about. Like, when I would like meet someone in the street and they would be like, oh my God, we heard, like, what kind of cancer? And I would have to be like, well, you know, it's the vagina, you know, like it, and almost there, like the idea of how much of a comic it was to be ill, which sounds very contradictory. So in a sense, that's what I learned from having cancer, is like the people who have been through the thing you are joking about are probably going to be the ones who will laugh the hardest and who are the most like, because they've already had to accept that and they've already had to process that. But as a trauma that appeared in my life, I think one of the biggest things I learned was like, you don't have to get stronger and realize loads of things about life. Like trauma can be like just super devastating, and you are allowed to be sad and angry that it happened to you. And in order in any way to move on, it was very important for me to kind of accept that I wasn't like, filled, like usually the narrative around cancer is like you survive it and then you move on and you become the strong, independent woman who, that's like, I didn't feel like that. I felt like the world, and I was just like angry. But anger is a really good feeling, because it's better than being sad, because anger is energy and it can turn into something. So that's usually what I say when people are like, what did you learn? I'm like, oh, it didn't teach me anything. It made me mad. It made me mad at the state of the world. And it made, to be fair, it made me look, I had to take a hard, long look at myself through it and be like, oh, all of these terrible feelings that you are feeling, can you accept that with yourself? Can you accept that you're angry and you feel like the world has turned on you, and you have all of these horrible thoughts, and that's, I guess, is a good thing. It makes me accept other people in pain much more.
So you took that energy and you created Sick. You mentioned it, like bringing the script to people you knew. Why, like, when did you decide to pick up the pen and you thought, like, I could turn my story into something that people could watch? And then what parallels did you draw between yourself and your protagonist, Alice?
Yeah, the protagonist in Sjukt is like very heavily based on me, I have to say. In a sense that a lot of it has actually happened, but in a different, you do change everything when you turn something into fiction. So obviously, but it was, I think I started it. I think I've always thought, since I like first got it, and when I understood that I was going to survive, because for a while I like everyone who gets a cancer diagnosis just thought that I was going to die, that this was it, that it was just going to get worse and worse, and then I was going to be done with, which is not the experience for most people who get cancer. But I had this idea of writing it, and I tried to put it in different formats, and I, like some kind of monologue thing, or I was like, oh, I should, tell how horrible it is to spend all that time at the hospital. But every time I wrote it as a straight up drama, it became so sad. And like, I was like, I wouldn't want to watch this. If when I was ill, like I would never watch this, and I would get mad if someone would try to tell me how I was supposed to feel in that time. And that was actually, it was actually Pia was a part of that, the episode writer as well, because it was my last year in school, and I was going to do this other project. We got to do like a last big project as writers, so we can do whatever we want. And I had started to write almost like this thriller thing, but I wasn't that into it. And then I just like, I just sat down one day and I just wrote down this crazy thing that had happened when I was ill, which was really funny, like laugh out loud funny. And Pia, who was then my mentor, I was just like, maybe I should do this instead. Like, maybe I should just do a comedy about cancer. And she was like, oh yeah, obviously you're going to do that. Like, go and do that now. And I was like, okay. And then I went and did that. And something then just like shook loose in me in the sense of like, oh, I can get so much darker and tell such like a deeper story of like what it is to be alive, to exist, if I have the humor, because then people can kind of take the dark stuff as well. So that was my big like, oh, this is why I love comedy. That's why I love Michaela Cole and Phoebe Waller-Bridge and all of those amazing shows that they've made, because they always have that sense of humor suddenly in them that makes you stand the pain.
And unfortunately, I can't see it because I'm in Canada, but Sick is on SVT. But being able to find that duality between the hard and the drama, like I know that Alice has to kind of reintegrate back into society and kind of find herself after that trauma. So if you are in Sweden or maybe like the Nordic countries, be sure to catch that on SVT. I'm really happy that you're here because you are brave and strong and you're continuing to tell stories. One of those stories being Young Royals. I know when your production company first approached you, it was more Riverdale-esque, but it is inspired by the class system and honor culture in Sweden. So where were you when the light bulb came over your head and you thought, I could make some changes here and I think it could be special?
Yeah, I actually went back into my emails the other day just to see, because I couldn't even remember when me and Lars, who is the executive producer of the show, started to talk about it. And it was actually 2 years ago. So I was writing the scripts for Sick, and me and Lars was having this dialogue about like whether we should do something together after Sick. And he pitched me this idea, like you said, like it had a murder in it. It was very Riverdale or Elite. And in my email, I find an email where I just write like, I think we should have, I want to do something about two siblings starting at the school. And see their different, like because they could have such a different approach to why they are there and how it works for them to be in this environment. And I also think we should take away the murder and just make it like about this love story, and one of the siblings will be the love interest. And I think the light bulb, the reason it even came up, and I thought about this afterwards, is if I didn't have that close relationship with Lars and I felt like I trusted him, I would probably not have dared just starting the conversation with that. I would probably have said, oh, this is not for me, and moved on. And instead I felt like I could just tell him, like, I think this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong. Can I do it like this? And he early in the emails, he's like, well, you can do whatever you want with it. Like, but Netflix would be interested in this kind of arena or this kind of story. And it just came from there. And I think that was because when I just started to think about these environments and just like reading about them, and I bought the few books that existed on the subject from the perspective of previous students. There's very few. And I just read them, and there was just like, yeah, just sometimes like that's a good story. You just know when it's like something just starts ticking in you, and you like, it's like an itch, like you have to scratch it, and it just keeps on coming back. And I'm very thankful for Lars then trusting me to be like, okay, we'll just change everything and do what you think works. And then we started the collaboration, and from there on, it just like we just found this story, and then I was obsessed. Like I've been living with these characters for 2 years. So yeah.
I think it speaks volumes, like you mentioned, to find people to work with who you feel comfortable sharing ideas and bouncing ideas off of, because otherwise this show wouldn't have come to fruition. Prior to the final title being Young Royals, I have to know what other names were attached or pitched to this project.
Oh my God. I think if you can take any combination of every word that is like royal, heritage, crown, prince, like boarding school, you take those ones, mix them in a bag, and like throw them out. Like we tried all of them. And I just very early on, I called it royals in my own like documents. I just called it royals because I felt like not royal as in even royalty, but as the feeling of like something royal, or a feeling like royally big, or like, it just felt right. And there's another big American show that was on a few years ago called that. So, you have to be very like, especially now in a world where like everyone is watching everything, like, I mean, there's a shortage of good titles.
There definitely is. It's so saturated, right? Like
Yeah,
you
it's
just
so
have to like
saturated.
Google an idea and then it could be like some faraway show in another country.
Yeah, exactly. So there was so many ideas, but then I think he just said in an email, I don't know who said it. I don't know if I said it, but it was just like Young Royals, and we were like, oh, that's, and then you just go, huh, yes, that's the one.
It fits. It fits perfectly. Was like Crown Prince ever like a title or?
I'm sure it was. We had like, there was like email chains of like 100 names. So
You're just like late at night one day, like tossing titles back and forth.
basically, yeah.
So before we do go further into this interview, just a spoiler warning for anyone watching, we will be discussing episodes 1 through 6. So please make sure you are all caught up on Netflix. Now, tell me about the research you did for this show. Like, who were some people you spoke with and what were those conversations that you had?
Yeah, so we pretty early on, there was some people who worked at a production company who started to go out and do interviews. We had a list of people that I wanted to kind of talk to, and not names as in that person, but more like it felt important for me. In Sweden, there is like an old, there is a book called The Evil, Ondskan, by Jan Guillou, which is a really famous book. You kind of have to read it in school. It's about a boarding school, and it's set in the 60s or 50s. It was written in the 80s, and everyone is grown up kind of reading this book. And I didn't want to end up just feeling like we did a new version of that book, which is about a lot of the hazing, and it's a lot of about physical violence in this boys school. So it was very important to me to talk to people who had been to these schools recently. So that was one category, was like people who have gone to these schools and can tell us an updated versions of what it is to go to these schools today, with social media being present, because that adds another layer to your experience. And then there was people who have experiences of, being queer and realizing afterwards at these schools. And then there were, trying to get as much information about how the royal everyday life looks like for the Swedish royal family, which is really hard. I have a few
Royal
friends.
correspondence.
Yes, right. Yeah, it was hard, but it's like you read between the lines, and there are some big books written about it as well, but more of a maybe in a political sense, or in a like trying to tell the story of why we still have monarchy in Sweden, etc. And one of the biggest resources we had one person who was also a production assistant during the whole shoot, who had gone to one of these schools, and she was queer. So I sat down with her, and also because it was good, because she knew the story, so we could actually talk about some of the things that happened in the story very specifically. And I think one of the things that did stand out to me was like, I think going into this, that like we will be surprised because these schools are no longer what they used to be. And today, of course, there will be like some people who are openly gay at these schools, but it was still my realization was like, when the rest of the society had kind of like, stuff had happened, it was still at these schools very like, oh no, you don't say it, because maybe but then you keep it to yourself because you're sharing rooms with other girls, and you don't want them to be like insecure. And I was like, these are like thoughts that I remembered from like the 90s and the early like 2000. But it's but you can kind of understand why that happens. And it has to do a lot with the upper class and the especially like the like keeping that, like the code of honor is so strong still. I think that's going to change. And I hope that, I mean, young royals, I hope some kids are watching it that goes to these schools today feeling like, oh, maybe there is a way for me to be a little bit more myself in this environment, you know. And that was also something important, to not make it like looking into these schools being like, now we are gonna, you know, show how it is. It's like, no, I want, you know, if there is a prince or a princess watching this show, I want them to feel like we represented them, like we tried to tell their story with integrity and with love, because you can hate the system, but like the people in it haven't chosen it. So, you know.
It must have been so eye-opening, as you mentioned, to kind of like speak with these students and then realize that even though we live in a modern society where social media exists, it's still very, like, as you mentioned, honor culture. There are still these values that are values, old values that are upheld. I'm hoping that royalties watching your show, I know it's touched a lot of people's hearts. Throughout the show, you had perception of social media and exposure. Were these themes you always knew you wanted to fit into your story?
Yeah, I have to say I'm one of those screenwriters who I don't like the idea of constantly having like a social media flow with on the screen, because I think social media is such a huge part of our lives today, and especially people who have never lived without social media. Like I at least remembers how it was before, so I have something to compare with. But I think for me, it's always important to show that whatever is happening on social media is actually something that is happening within you as a person. So it's still an experience. It felt very important to me to kind of show how social media forms and challenge and kind of tear on today's youth, but without it being this like constant flow of like, you know, people's screens. Like there is the moments we see their social media, it's very like it just happens, you know, then and then. And I'm really happy how it turned out with in the like final product as well. It's like, yes, you see their messages on screen, but it's a lot about also like there's one of I have seen where like Wilhelm is it's in episode 2 when he's about to sneak out, he's sneaking away from the rowing practice to go and see Simon instead, and you can see him sending a message being like, oh, why couldn't you come to the rowing practice? And then he puts down the phone and he's sitting there waiting. And you can see the stress in him, like it is, like when you're waiting for someone to reply. And then we wait with him until he gets the reply. And all of those little things I kind of think shows that social media is something that is just like, it's just something that expands our own ego and our world, but it's still the same like primal feelings that we experience when it happens. And the video obviously leaking, like we knew that obviously like that was a major turning point, and I felt it was important to to do it in the way that we did. That it was like very delicate. I can't speak now. Like how you depict it, and how the reactions were from everyone else, because people wouldn't be like, oh my god, is he gay? You know, like the youths today don't react like that, but at the same time show just having your most inner private moment just posted for everyone, and everyone being suddenly a part of your experience, and how that shifts something in you.
Yeah, I do think those themes were handled so well because, yeah, as you mentioned, it's not just like mindless social media that was depicted in the show. A large part of it is due to Felice's storyline. So how much time, you know, she spends on a place like Instagram and how that kind of feeds into how she values herself or how her parents value her. And that's how she was voted for Lucia. And then you mentioned how the narrative can be really controlled and regulated through people of power, like the royal family, with the damage control they did for not one but two of Wilhelm's videos. So was this kind of damage control something? Did you kind of research on that front as well, and see how they might kind of control or get ahead of the story?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the most interesting things about social media. It is like the whole like that you can control your own narrative, but then that you can also be very, you can be like publicly executed then if you think out loud or you say something stupid, or, you know, like, yeah, we had a lot of discussions about how, like, because famous people are different from the royal families, because they can still kind of be a bit old-fashioned without anyone like kind of reacting, whether we might expect celebrities to react instantly if we call them out on some, across Europe and the world have handled certain like damaging situations, and I think it's super interesting to still see that they, because with social media, we also get to see more of their lives and how they are taking control of that narrative and those spaces. But one thing that continues to happen is that you can experience that we are then more open, because we're seeing things, you know, getting to follow them on a regular day, or this is just a little picture that we post from here. But it's still the same institutions, it's still the same values. And, you know, even if they go out, you know, the big Oprah interview with Meghan and Harry, you know, like they still don't really tell you the full story, you know what I mean? So they like, it's almost like a clan, you know, like you do not talk about the problems outside of the family. And they will be like, yeah, you know, yeah, like some people commented on his skin color, and who commented? No comments, you know, like you are still protecting, like almost, and I guess that's relatable to you, like to us normal people, our commoners, in the sense that like we can, you know, be angry at our parents and be like, oh, you know, you did this and this to me growing up. But if someone else comes and says something, a lot of us will, you know, protect them. So that's just that on like a grander scale.
Being able to shape, you know, what people's opinions are. Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I know you've talked about also how liberating it is to challenge the norms and expectations for your characters. So tell me about writing and conceptualizing specifically the characters of Felice and of August.
Yeah, it was actually really funny, because when we first wrote those, I think I said out loud, like, and I think that was written in the like early storylines as well, like, this is the stereotype we are setting up. Like, this is the poshest girl, she with the highest, you know, ranking in school, and this is the poshest boy who has the most status and status quo to uphold. And then we are going to turn that on its head, you know. And I think for Felice's character, it was a lot about the fact that, and this is from my own experience going to school, like usually the most popular girl or boy or whatever, they usually didn't have to be mean. Because they were at the top. It was usually the people around them who had to kind of secure their place within the, you know, the ranking system. And I thought it was like really nice if we could see Felice for her, like that she actually has a very kind view of the world. Like, she's a little bit harsh with Sarah the first time we meet her, because she's stressed about how all the expectations on her from her parents and from the legacy that she's trying to uphold. But you know, as soon as Sarah just like shows that she is someone you can kind of trust, like she just like instantly opens up to her. So that was very important with Felice, and to also show like being the one that is like always, you know, people saying, oh, you're so pretty, you're so beautiful, you're like, yes, that is a privilege that you can use, but it's also really damaging for someone's like self-esteem to be valued for your status all the time. And with August, we worked a lot with his body image, even if he's I usually think of him as like he's so tall and he's so, like he's like muscular and he's so like, wow, super, like portraying masculinity in such a like harsh way. But he's he's the smallest little boy of all of them. You know what I mean? Like he's the one who will lose everything if he for a second doesn't uphold this idea of himself. And he will do whatever it takes to uphold the front that he has put up or the walls that he have built. And we see him cracking down because also he becomes ridiculous. Like Wilhelm says that in one of the earliest episodes as well. Like, why is he's hysterical? And everyone's like, yeah, he's so annoying. He's just like, but also he's super kind. He tries to be to Wilhelm. He's, like, oh, are you feeling ill? Should I get you something? Like he's trying so much, but it becomes ridiculous because you're like, why are you pushing these things that no one else cares about? And his body image being so shallow as well, because obviously he's measuring his fat in one episode. You can see that just in a little glimpse, and it felt like a theme that I haven't seen a lot of, like how young men and men in general are having to uphold this ideal of who they should be. Which I think just shifts the stereotype narrative.
I think that those characters are so well written. I just want to touch back on, Felice, as you mentioned, she was not the nicest to Sarah initially, but how fast they became friends, right? And how quickly you mentioned she opened up to her. And with August, like, as you mentioned, it's funny because he is a character who everything he does makes sense to him, but not to other people. We were speaking with Malte, and he said he was actually on like this protein kind of diet prior to production. So what did you kind of know about that? And did he really he embraced that character?
Yeah, I mean, I when I saw him in the casting, he had obviously not been in the like the working out schedule that he then did. So he was just kind of this like tall, gangly, like hippie dude. And he came in and did August, and it was just like, wow, this is something different. Like he can then have that kind of like softness that that August also has, but that he's trying to push away. And also because he's had enormous trauma in his life, which is always also like, it's only mentioned a few times in the series, but with his father and everything. So he has a lot to lose. And I think the actors did such an amazing job, like being a part of creating their characters and shaping them and coming with all these like ideas and love and care for their character work. And I think, I guess for August, the character of August, the physical aspect will be the visible one, but I think the mental aspect of all of them are the actors' like greatest toolbox, and that is something that can never be like measured or seen. But it's amazing to see that process of them like suddenly being their characters, and being something that I couldn't even have imagined. That's beautiful.
I think that working with your actors also helps you not fall into, like you mentioned, like stereotypical one-dimensional character traps. Now, who was the most difficult character to write and why?
I have to say Wilhelm, because I think the main character is always the hardest one, because usually, I mean, there's obviously 5 big characters, and then it's Simon and Wilhelm who are like main leads. But Simon has such a clear purpose going into the school, and his relationship with his sister and his mom and his dad, and you can kind of see what's at stake for him the whole time. But Wilhelm, and this, I find this in everything I do, the main character, you have a feeling of what they are going to go through and how you're going to get them there. But until the final stages of the process, which is the editing and the sound design, then it's usually where I realized what I have been trying to tell with this character. But Wilhelm was super hard because he's so privileged. So how are we gonna find that understanding of him, and how can we also show this pressure from the royal, the family, without them being there? Because it would be a different thing if he went to school close to home and he would go home every night and we would see him, interacting with his parents. But now that is all happening outside, and it's him carrying that whole feeling. But then obviously, as soon as Edwin, like I saw Edwin, I was just like, this is gonna work. He can carry this kind of like emotional, like roller coaster within him, and he makes it believable. And I think the biggest, just like the first scene where he is telling, but it's the first big public thing they do, where he's gonna say that he's gonna be transferred to Hilleska, and he's apologizing for the video. That little monologue that he's doing, where the camera is like split, and seeing that, I was like, we got it, guys, we're good. Because like that is such a, like, I don't know, ridiculous text to say, and then he says it, and it's just like, yeah, of course you can give him anything, he will just say it like it's the most natural thing in the world.
I feel like it's like a bandwidth issue, because I got you saying like I did get you saying, I know it's the scene where it kind of zooms in on his face. Did you repeat his dialogue?
I didn't repeat his whole dialogue. I just said it was such, I think that was the same, that dialogue has been there since the first script, and like the first version. And like you can see then how everything is going on inside him, and which Edwin does so amazingly. It's just bubbles like under the surface, and you're just trying to understand him, and that's a really hard thing to do, and he does it so amazingly, in that long shot with that ridiculous speech that he's gonna do. It's just beautiful.
And then a large part of that also, you worked with your conceptual director, Rose Jessica. So I know you mentioned you wanted to work with her. So tell me about when you knew you two had shared the same vision for this show.
I think it was, well, firstly, I've always been very privileged in a way to, on every show that I've done where I've been the head writer, I have been a part of getting to choose which director to work with. And that's just such a nice thing to be a part of, and to see the different visions that people come up with. But when it was like Roshda in Young Royals, I think it was the first meeting we had. And firstly, I love her first film that she made. It's on Netflix. It's called Dream On. No, it's called something else, but I forget it in engelska. Dröm vidare. But I remember seeing that a few years ago and just being like, I want to work with her in the future. Like this is so good. And she also, she's really brave and really daring in her language, in like the imagery, and she'll just try stuff. She's just very and she's like super chill all the time while doing it as well. And I just felt in the first meeting, I think she gave us the reference Virgin Suicides. And I was just like, yeah, of course. Yeah, that is a great reference. And I wouldn't have come up with that myself, thinking, oh, we're doing a teen drama show. It's really, like high drama, like high paced. But then she said it and I was like, yes, yeah, that is exactly what we're doing. And also hearing her, ideas for the casting and for, you can be very honest with her. And I think that that is the most treasured skill you can have in this industry is being able to just tell it like it is and have an honest conversation about it. So I was super excited when we had the pleasure of having her, and Erika as well, who came on as a second director. I mean, it was just, it was brilliant.
I really loved their interpretations of your script. And I know we spoke with Roshta and she mentioned like, not respecting the environment. So kind of seeing that play out in the show. If you had to pick one from script to screen, which was your favorite scene and why?
Oh, wow. Uh, oh, yeah, that's so hard. I actually think from script to screen, the shot I was talking about where Wilhelm does his first speech, because it just says so much about his character, is one of my favorites still, just because how well played it is, and that Roshta decided to continue to have that she didn't edit in the long shot, that we got to travel the whole way up into like a very tight close-up of him and then him looking in the looking in the camera. I think was beautiful. And just because there was so much that needed to be conveyed in that moment that we didn't have space for, and he makes it happen. I have so many favorite scenes. I think one of the funniest one is when they're doing like on the table scene, because that's something they actually do. That's something that the research that we found out in the research that you do in these schools, because like you can't really have secrets when you're all living together and you're all like everything will come out eventually. So you do this thing then when during a lunch or a dinner, you're like, okay, you get up on the table and you tell us who did you make out with? And usually it's like the same people have made out with the same people, but it's, it's a small school. So you don't care. And in the final edit, I just think it's really hilarious the way it cuts between the boys and the girls' homes, and how different they speak about their sexual encounters in a very funny way. No, but there's too many. Like I feel like I'm like blowing my own trumpet here, but I so many.
What was interesting about that one is I think someone had maybe tweeted at you and they're like, they also it reminded them of like that Grease moment, like that whole tell me more, which I think was a nice parallel. And like you mentioned, it actually does happen. So you did draw from real life experience. Which scene went through the most rewrites?
I guess it would be the scenes between Wilhelm and the Queen in episode 6. Just because there was so much that you wanted those scenes to tell the audience, and there was so many ways to do it, and there were so many different aspects of the situation that Wilhelm is in episode 6 that are so interesting, and I think I rewrote those. I don't even know. I think I have like 50 versions of some of those scenes, just because, and also kind of synchronizing with the team, on like how harsh can the Queen be, and how warm can we make her, like the scene in the car when they are going to the castle to do the final like the interview, like how much can we give away, how much can she like trying to persuade him to go and do this, and it was just such a delicate matter, and so yeah, I think those.
Yeah, it really was balancing, like you mentioned, she is a mother, but she is also the queen. So really having to balance her duties with someone like now her only child who she loves. You mentioned the queen. Parental dynamics are really fascinating because we did get to meet the parental figures of all 5 of the main characters. Why was it important for you, especially more so with like Felice or August, Simon, Sarah? Like, why was it important to highlight these relationships and not just have these teenagers talk about their parents, as we mentioned before, and their ideas of them?
I think it's very important to, since the show is about what you inherit as a from your parents, biologically, but also from the environment and how you were brought up. I think it was really important to kind of show, to get a face for them, kind of, and to just get, we just get little bits and pieces here and there, especially Felice and August parents, they're just there in one scene, And sorry, my boyfriend is making faces at me now. He doesn't understand that this is recorded. And and I think if we would have just had them talk about it, it could also have been how they perceive their parents. It could have been like, oh, but this isn't the truth. Like, you are telling me about your father or mother, but that's not actually how they are. So it was important to get these glimpses of them, just kind of adding layers to the story. And I think the audience does such a nice job of kind of filling in the gaps. Some of the analyses everyone is making about the scenes are really beautiful, because it's like, oh, it was there early on in the script process, but then that disappears, because that's a part of the process, and it's an important aspect to get stuff out and, you know, have a clear path of what you're going to tell. But it's so nice to see when that kind of still comes through in how well played the characters are, the parents as well. I mean, there are some great actors who are not, they're getting like 1 minute of screen time, but they are like really big here in Sweden. So
yeah, it's nice to see that, you know, what you wanted to portray is actually being interpreted by fans, because then you know that the cuts that you made were appropriate and it works well. Tell me about writing the final scene where Wilhelm tells Simon, "I love you," and they share that hug, knowing that it was the final scene for the two of them and for essentially the show's first season. Like, what did you want to convey and accomplish?
Actually, I think it has to do with what happens just before that, how much tension is in that scene. It actually comes back to the scene where Wilhelm is talking with his mother and realizing that she knew it was August. And in the script, he hangs up on her, and I had written in the script, like, he just cuts her off. He has never done that before. He has never been that rude to her, in a sense. We all understand him, obviously. But then I had written something like, a fire is ignited within him, or something like ridiculous, something that you can't, I mean, how is anyone going to portray that? Like, but in the final edit, they had edited that with him hanging up, standing there outside, just like trying to take this in, and you see something shifting in his eyes, and then you cut straight to the church in the morning, and the candle being lit, like this, like matches just strikes, and then you have the sparking sound of fire, and you got this little light. And when I saw that, I was like, that's like, this is the most beautiful like translation of how a ridiculous little line, because that's what I wanted the audience to feel like, you know, something has shifted in him. He has been through all of this, but something has shifted. And that just kind of like symbolically, it's just very nice that they managed to pull that through and find a way to actually get that light like ignited. So when he goes out and he hugs Simon, like that hug is obviously kind of showing, in a sense, to the pupils at the school, you know, like, yeah, like, because also they know, you know what I mean, like you can't fool them. They are just gonna hold up the appearance because they're a clan, but they're not gonna like not know. And I think it was a very delicate matter of feeling that something had shifted without just like, because he's still stuck in his decision. He's still stuck in the situation he's in. He can't just like change that by in a second, but he can give that hug, and he can, you know, say that to Simon, and getting that, "I hope you have a nice Christmas," which is also a kind of like defiance towards the situation in that line. So yeah, I think, and like then we had obviously, like it's always with the endings on every show I've done, the last few frames, you talk about them for ages. And I think that look in the camera gave us the understanding of his journey without words, which I think was, yeah, perfect, the perfect ending to season 1.
It was such a beautiful scene. Did you always have Wilhelm saying "I love you" and for Simon not to say it back. Like I don't think he's in that place. Like just that journey with him in season 1, it wouldn't have been right for him to say it back at that time.
No, because he had already opened up to in the scene before, in the very emotional scene where he says, like, I respect you, I see you, but I can't be with you on that journey, because then I will, harm myself in the process. Which is very mature for Simon to say, in a sense, but that's also his journey, starting to not be super codependent every single time. But no, we worked a lot with those last lines and the whole scene. It was basically, I would say, you tell the story when you're writing the scripts, and then again when you're shooting, and then again when you edit it. And during that process, so much happens that makes you realize what you were trying to say the whole time, in a sense, which is lovely, and the magic of working in cinema. We just changed around lots with that scene in the ending. And I think when he says "I love you," what is Simon gonna say back? There is no and also he's already said it, in a sense, being on his side for so long, you know what I mean? So it was important to not, because what would it have changed if he said it there? Wouldn't have changed anything. They would still be in the same situation.
The line that I was looking for there was, "I don't want to be anybody's secret." And it's everywhere now. It was so well done, and it keeps viewers wanting, I think, just more moving forward, because if he had said it then it would have been like, oh, nice, perfect ending. But as you mentioned, there's so much disruption going on, you don't want to tie a pretty bow on top. You were only on set for 1 day because Sick was in production at the same time. What do you remember from that single day on set? What scenes were being filmed?
Yeah, it was beautiful, because I managed to go, it was actually one of the last days, I think the second to last. And it was when Wilhelm returns from Eric's funeral to the school, and they have the memorial, and Simon sings "Remember," which is one of my, I love that song. It's by Sena Bosi and Jacob Banks, which is some great, amazing musicians and singers. So when I came on set, I had only met Edwin on the tube. I hadn't met any of the actors. I felt like I knew them because I had, seen all the takes, and, since the casting, I knew them, but they didn't knew me. So I just came on set, and Edwin just runs up to me hugging me, and then I walk into the school and I meet with the cast. And that was also because usually, in Sick, for example, I'm on set every day. I know everyone. I have a relationship with everyone, a working relationship. I don't know them as the characters, but now I walked into a room with everyone in their school uniforms, all these characters just looking at me, and my brain just I just I was very overwhelmed. And I think it was one, I can't remember who he was, but who when we said hi, because it was also during COVID, so we couldn't I had my mask on, they just saw my eyes, I just came in and one of them was like, "Oh, how does it feel? Do you feel do you feel like you're God, that you created this?" And I was like, well, actually, yes, but it's scary, because it's been in my head, and it's been in all of our heads, and you have been through this process, but I am just stepping into this universe that suddenly exists. And then obviously Simon, Omar, sang the beautiful, beautiful cover, which is so amazing with the choir. So I just sat behind the camera and cried. So that's they must have been who is this person who just turns up and sits crying behind a monitor and then leaves?
It must have been such an emotional day, and I love that you got to hear Omar sing. It just so happens to be one of the one day that you're on set. You've spent a lot of time with Edwin and Omar since really navigating global stardom originating from your shows. So is it very much like a proud parent moment for you?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I think a lot of like I'm 32, so a lot of people my age and a lot of my friends are starting to have children, etc. And I'm and they talk about this feeling of seeing your child for the first time, and I'm like, yeah, but have you written a show with with some amazing actors who portray the story that you were trying to make in this way, and then you like see them like reach global fandom and like being these amazing new actors who are like a resource for the rest of Sweden. So yeah, I do feel like a proud parent sometimes, and yeah, and all of them are just like I'm so proud of them for being like so mature in this. Like when I was 18, I would never have been able to handle that kind of pressure, and they are just so smart and like yeah, they're just amazing. So yeah, very proud. Even if I can't be really, I mean, I guess their parents should be even more proud.
I mean, I feel like you've earned the right to be proud of them. Like you mentioned, they've just played your characters so well, and I think that they're so genuine in interactions with fans and accommodating, but also keeping it honest. Like I know Edvin did an interview recently where he did say I think it made him uncomfortable to see people unearthing like childhood photos, which I think is like that boundary that when they're comfortable enough to say it, like you just hope that it gets out there.
Yeah, no, and like, I mean, I'm super protective of them, but then also in a sense, I can't do much about it because they are also brought up in a world where social media exists. So they have a different approach to it in some ways. And I think the fandom is like 99% of the time just so super lovely. But I think it was Michaela Cole who said she won a prize for I May Destroy You, if it was the Emmys or something. And she said, like, don't be afraid to people who are working in the industry to, go offline. Don't be afraid to take your time. And that's something that I try to tell them a lot as well, like, and myself, like, at the time being, I'm still so fascinated with everything that's come around it and the fandom and I mean, yeah, because I feel like a journalist sometimes. I'm just out there trying to understand the world, but there will come a time where I have to log off as well and just go back to creating. And like I do that now as well. Don't spend that much time on social media as it might look. I just pop in and be like, what happened today? But it is a very it does take a lot of energy, obviously. And also them becoming symbols for people wanting them to be perfect and wanting them to represent everything good and wholesome, and no human can do that.
Yeah, I think just taking that break is important, and I hope that they're getting their breaks and their rests and support, which obviously is the most important part. Season 2 was officially announced September 22nd. It's been, I think every day people are looking for new clues and hints. We'll say some people are better than others at answering questions about it in interviews. Omar, but what has been that lead up into that announcement? Like, I don't know, you might not be able to say, but I'm sure Netflix had given you the green light sooner because obviously that announcement was filmed before the 22nd. And so was it hard to keep your lips sealed about that one?
Yeah, but also I think that comes down to the understanding of the industry. Like it's not up to us or the production company. It is up to Netflix when they want to announce things, and that has like to do with a lot of other things that is not within their control or my control. So for my sake, I didn't find it that hard because I think obviously we started to work on the storyline this spring for season 2, but you always do that. You have to be, cautionary. If you get a second season, you want to know what it's going to be about. And also, just even if we wouldn't have gotten a second season, I would probably, I have an idea of the whole time what we're going to tell. It's just not something that just like pops up. And we actually finished the storyline for season 2 before season 1 even came out. And that was important for me because obviously I could never have anticipated the scale on which it would get so popular. But I didn't want to feel like I started to change things after I saw the reactions of the crowds. You know what I mean? Trying to keep that creative vision, like what has been the point? What are we telling? And keeping that red line running, however many seasons or not we would have gotten, because I have to be like that. I have to always be thinking like, we're going to get another season, or we're going to, I'm going to continue this, or this is going to end here. If you have like a proper ending, like this is closing, all the doors, this is the ending, I would want to be standing firm on that ground as well and be like, no, this is how this saga ends. We're not going to continue. So that was really important for me. But then obviously it's so cool then when you see people getting your story and loving the things that you fought for, and everything that everyone has worked so hard to portray. And that obviously gives an enormous boost of energy. And you're like, and that I take with me in season 2. We know I know this is going to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so important to know what direction you're heading in. And as you mentioned, I feel like that's some of the problem with limited series. And then they try to extend the story because they're basically writing from scratch because they had written a beginning and end and then trying to kind of draw it out. So I'm glad that you know where you're going. I know you can't really say anything, but generally, what are you hoping to explore more, maybe in terms of storylines you've already talked about or discussed in season 1?
Well, I think it has to do a lot with deepening the different themes that we set up in season 1, really. And actually the Writers Guild of Sweden, their tagline is "We know how it ends," which I think is hilarious. And you have to have that idea. Like Sick, for example, it was a limited series. That ended with the character having come to her full understanding, actually changing something within her that changed her perception of the world and changed how maybe she would take on the world in the future. For me, that's the full story, and we haven't come to that point with Young Royals. So that's what we're exploring. And it continues obviously to be a saga about heritage. Do we become what we are expected to become or who we want to be? I also want to touch a bit on themes in regards of, we see it in a lot of shows today, characters kind of, breaking free and breaking free from norms and becoming woke or whatever. And that's something that something I miss sometimes in that portrayal, is that can also, you are losing something doing that. You are losing your naivety, yeah, well, you understand what I'm saying. And you are losing maybe a kind of sense of who you are or where you're going, in a sense. And I think it's really it's really hard to change. It's really, really hard, and it costs you something to break free or to try to break free. And it's not just I think it's super good that we get to see characters in a lot of other shows that are good role models, and they are doing the right thing, and someone is bullying them and they deliver this amazing speech about how they can't be bullied. But when I was in school, I might have had fantasies about doing that, but I would never have been able to say anything when it actually, like you would have been there like, oh, like I think it's so interesting, like to see that human side of it. Like we're pretty shit, like in the loveliest way. So there is so many interesting like points to touch on in season 2 for that reason as well.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you mentioned about like being woke and now people trying to figure out which character would kind of be taking that on. Is there a character or let's say student at Halerska who you would have liked to explore and see more of in season 1?
Well, I mean, obviously, like all of them, and as the screenwriter, when you sit on all the information and all the funny, quirky, like things that you could tell about the character, you're always going to have that. But that's also my biggest weakness, is always trying to squeeze too much in. And then,
I think that's a trap. You kind of can't do that because you want to focus in on certain storylines, right?
Yeah, and also like one of the things I learned from Sick, actually, which also became a lesson here, but it came from Sick, and that was like, because that was about me, that was such a personal story. I wanted to tell everything about how it was to have cancer, like I wanted to tell everything, and there is no time for that, and you have to get specific and you have to choose. And my big realization in that was like, okay, but in this project, I'm telling this story about cancer. And in another project in the future, I can tell the other side of it, or I can have, a mother or a father having cancer, and how that would be for, like you don't have to tell everything in one series, because that's impossible, and it will make it worse. And I know there's a huge urge from the fandom, like, oh, deleted scenes, wanting to get what is the answer to that question, and is it like that or like that? And I welcome all of that, but I like it because it makes people's own fantasies. Like, I don't want to give them straight up answers. I usually, when I answer those questions, I'm usually like, I think like this, or maybe you could interpret it like this, because it's not interesting what the right answer is. The interesting thing is the discussion, and that people can have different opinions about the same scene. That's beautiful, so I want to encourage that, but not as much like be like, like you have to, like it's magic. And I think like I want to inspire people to go and do their own like stories. And so if someone is sitting, you get a lot of suggestions, and people like, I want this to happen, and like for me that's a separate, I very much separate those processes. The process I have with my team and my writing team and the production and Rashta and all the actors, like that's like we're doing that. And then everything that's happening in the fandom, that's their own art pieces, that's their own like broadening the world, and maybe that can inspire someone to be like, oh, I would have done this with this character. Okay, but make it like, take that out of it, put that into a new context, and make another series of something else. But like, like those things I think are really cool. But it's not like, I don't think if people got what they thought they wanted, they would not be happy. It would be a music video, just a montage of Simon and Wilhelm. Like having intimate scenes. Like, yeah, that's a music video, guys.
I love like just what you mentioned about theories, because like black and white, that's too boring and too easy, and there's really just beauty in interpreting it for themselves. And I think that that's what's so great about this passionate fandom. Now, there are some celebrity fans that I think you've seen these kind of tweets or messages. We'll go through a few specifically. Troye Sivan, who is a fantastic singer, he's also done some acting. He said that he tweeted that the acting in Young Royals is phenomenal. I think Netflix, you're like, of course, yeah, like I agree. Netflix tweeted him back and they're like, I think Wilhelm could need another brother. And he said that he would go learn Swedish. Connor Jessup, who is a fantastic Canadian actor. He's the lead in Netflix's Lock and Key. He wrote on the Instagram post, the season 2 announcement, Oh my God, can I be an extra? Can I make sandwiches? Can I hold an umbrella? Can I play one of the rowing machines? I'll learn Swedish. I'm ready.
So sweet. Yeah, like I mean, I think it's like it's such a shock when you've made the other shows I've made have been shown in Sweden and in like the Nordic countries, and then doing it on this scale. Like I've heard people like saying like, "Oh, this and that celebrity, I watched it with that person," and it just blows my mind that like, oh. Oh, it's actually the whole world. Like that is like, you can't take that in. That is like, the brain cannot process that. Like now I'm just like, haha, greatly loved it. You know.
And Kevin McHale from Glee, I think you saw this one for sure. If you need someone to take out the trash or get coffees, I'm there.
Also it's nice of them saying that, because that's also like everyone who worked on Young Royals who, you know, were assistants or runners, or like they worked so hard. Like the people who did take out the trash from Young Royals, yeah, they deserve like the biggest applause, because you know, everyone on that set who makes it go around, like they are the people I look up to, who are standing there in the rain and the cold and just like making the scene happen. Like that for me is like, I've worked on set myself a lot, and it is terrible.
Holding the umbrellas up, right? So like really kudos to the crew, because it doesn't happen without everyone involved. Quite the lineup of fans, which leads me to my question, like, are cameos something that you would be open to? Because I feel like there's this fine line between having all these people who want to be involved, and then maintaining that integrity of the show and what your vision is.
I think other shows that do have cameos, they should get our cast to go and do cameos for them. Like that would be my because they would be so funny and so sweet. But I don't know. I guess it depends. If there was a character that was like, oh, this would actually be this one person would portray this character in a way that makes it something completely new and special, you know. But overall, in my series, I have worked in Sjukt as well, with a lot of faces that haven't really been seen on the big screen. Obviously, we have some really big names in Young Royals, so I'm not going to say that as a whole, but I think also that's what makes it feels real. Like what's make it feel authentic, and that it's not these big names, and like it's not Glee. I love Glee, but that's another type of show, you know. And it ticks other boxes, and it has other purpose. When you put it on, you want to experience something different. And I think my main goal, I think Roshda would agree with me on this one, is always to like to make it feel authentic. I would always rather choose a non-famous actor, or someone who you hadn't seen that much on screen, at least, in a role. No, I can't say that, because it always comes down to who works in the moment for that role. Of course, like it's not the actor's fault if they are famous. Like you can't make it like that. But authenticity, like to make it feel real. Like I want to feel like when I go into a series or a film, I want to feel like it could be my neighbor. That's the feeling I want everyone to have.
So basically, yeah, like I would say casting, right? Like if they have the right fit and energy, then you're kind of open to anything. And now flashback scenes, because I spoke with Ivor and Zhao, who stars Eric and Alexander respectively, I do have to, they're such wonderful humans. I do have to ask, like, are flashback scenes something that you are open to as a writer and fitting that in?
I think those theories are the funniest, with all the like resurrecting Eric theories.
And you think he's gone? We spoke with him, and like to further the storyline, he is gone. But there's been some interesting ones out there. I'm sure you have read them.
It's hilarious. I don't think I can comment on if we're going to use flashback or not, because that's also a part of a process that's bigger than me or bigger than my
You're
ambition.
under contract and we need this to go ahead. So
Yes.
Lisa can't say a lot. Revenge plot. Alexander, revenge plot. Did you feel like he was thrown under the bus when you were writing?
Yeah, obviously. Obviously, he's thrown under the bus. And I mean, it's Wilhelm who does it. He chooses. No, I can't say anything about that either, or like expand on it further, I'm afraid.
No, but that's the interesting thing is we spoke a lot, and it's usually August, but in that decision we spoke about it too, that it was Wilhelm who made that decision, and you mentioned like losing part of oneself by standing up. So I think that that's really an interesting thing to take into season 2. As we wrap up here, you said that you're just starting out as a writer. You plan to peak in your 50s, which is a while away from now, but short-term goals, like what are you hoping to grow in terms of skills and experience?
Well, I think I'm like everyone, learning with every project that you do. I learned so much from doing season 1 with the team. I'm so excited to get to continue and to like improve even more. And I mean, short-term goals in a sense, I'm in the middle of getting kind of representation internationally, and that feels like I found some people who I'm really happy to work with and who are already pitching me some like very, very big projects, which makes me realize how much Young Royals have broadened my horizons. I've always been super content with like working in Sweden and this is also the place I can tell stories about, because this is where I'm from, you know, in a sense. But it's so cool to understand that the world now is so much bigger due to how I mean, like Squid Game, like Korean cinema suddenly like exploding, and you know, which I love. Like some of my favorite films are Korean, so seeing that suddenly like exploding, it makes me also like, oh, actually, no, maybe I can work with a Korean director. You know what I mean? And so that's the short term, and also expanding in my role as my profession is I'm a writer. That's what I do. That's my profession. But I see that sometimes I work as more similar to like maybe a showrunner position. So that would be to expand and see if I can get even more experience with that and how that would work. And basically also like learning to say no. Like I'm saying no to some pretty big stuff. And my mom always asks me like, how does it feel to say no? And I'm like, no, it's terrible. And she's like, aren't you terrified that you're going to say no to something that's going to like make your career? And I'm like, thanks, mom. No, yes, I'm it's terrifying to say no, but it's also good because I think there's a lot of great writers. You can put most of them on anything and they would make it into a great show. But what I did with Young Royals, like I think if they would have asked other writers, they would probably have gone with that other setup. So I could bring something different to Young Royals and make it my story, our story. And I hope to continue to expand on that, to choose projects with my heart and like with, you know, having the like tentacles out, feeling like, is this something that's gonna be different if I do it? And if I feel yes, then I do it, you know.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited for you and all these opportunities. And as you mentioned, saying no, because if you don't have that gut feeling, then you don't want to, you know, put your all into something that you don't think personally would work out. So we have a lot to look forward to. Obviously, season 2 filmed essentially in the winter in 2019, right? So
2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it? I'm like too far ahead. So it was in your mind 2 years ago, but you filmed like a year ago. So hopefully you'll be back on set like exactly 1 year later. You'll get to spend more time on set, obviously, this time around. So you must be looking forward to getting to actually interact with a lot of the cast.
Yeah, I don't know about that though. I might now. I'm so secure with the team that I don't even feel the need to need to be on set. But no, obviously, like I'm just super happy to. I feel so privileged, so privileged to work with everyone involved in this production because they are geniuses, all of them.
And you have a good team behind you. Our signature question: if you could be any ice cream flavor, which would you be and why?
Oh, 100% vegan chocolate. Like, yeah, no question.
I love that answer. I think it was like the quickest answer. You're just like 100%. Thank
No,
you
it's just
so
good.
much, Lisa, for taking the time to chat. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was not so nice speaking with you.
Likewise, for those watching, make sure to catch Sick on SVT if you are in Sweden. Young Royal season 1 is out on Netflix. Season 2 is coming in 2022, and we will see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.